What is the best shutter speed for real estate photography? Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Rick McAvoy, and each week I talk about something that I've written about on my weekly blog, which you can get to at rickmcavoyphotography.com. Now, as you'll quickly realise, I'm not a polished seasoned broadcaster. I'm just me giving you practical, sensible, useful, actionable advice, mainly about architectural construction and real estate photography. There's no edits, it's just me talking about the blog post. So like I say, if you'd rather read the blog post, that's absolutely fine. Just check out my website, and I'm just going to go through a few of the things I want to mention here. I won't take too much of your time up, honestly. So in the last post, I wrote about the best f-stop, or aperture, as we like to call it, for real estate photography. Having started with that, it made sense to go through the best shutter speed for real estate photography. Now, this is one of those that when I give you the initial answer, you're going to go, nah, don't get it. You're not going to agree. So let me give you the answer and let me justify it. Okay? The best shutter speed for real estate photography is 1/125th of a second when shooting handheld. If you're using a tripod, this is less important, and it depends if anything is moving in the scene. But the important thing is to use the right shutter speed to get super sharp photos every time. Okay, I've given you a number to work with, so why that number? So like I say, before you get on saying you could take sharp photos handheld with a 12-second exposure using the XYZ widget from ABC Corporation using their miracle orbital spinning device. Fine, but I ain't got one of them. I've got a Canon 6D. I haven't got image stabilization. I've got a camera. I've got a lens that doesn't have image stabilization. So that's no use to me. Okay, so how do I go with this number? Well, this is a general thing. I am not saying use this shutter speed for every real estate photo that you take. But you will find your shutter speed is in the range of the 125th of a second for normal shooting in normal conditions in normal daylight, using a normal aperture for real estate photography. Now, if it's faster, that's fine. You're not losing anything. If it's less than 125th of a second, we get into problems. Okay, so there is an old rule of thumb that you can safely shoot handheld at 1/60th of a second. Now this goes back to when I was starting out, and as a rule it still applies. So what am I talking about here? 1/60th of a second should be a fast enough shutter speed to capture a sharp photo, and the shutter has moved fast enough to counter any movement of me or you holding our cameras. Okay? Nothing to do with what you're looking at, because the speed of that, who knows? Thankfully with buildings, they're not moving, are they? That's a good thing, and that's why in some ways this is less important, but we still need to know this stuff. So, in general terms, if you are taking a photo handheld correctly at 1/60th of a second, you should be taking a sharp photo. Now, first thing, the other aspect of this is that your shutter speed should be faster than the reciprocal of the focal length. Let me explain this. If you're using a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second, first off, well done. You shouldn't be using a focal length longer than that. So if you're shooting at 200 millimeters, before I make a mess of the explanation, if you're shooting at 200 millimeters, your shutter speed should be 1/200th of a second or faster. If you're shooting at 500 millimeters, your shutter speed should be 1/500th of a second or faster. Why is this? Well, the more you zoom in, the longer the focal length, the more any movement is exaggerated. Now for real estate photography, we're not using those long focal lengths. I take most of my photos at 17mm. Now that doesn't mean that I can take every photo at 1/20th of a second, because it doesn't quite work like that. 1/60th of a second is a safe shutter speed, so if I've got 17mm focal length, 1/125th of a second, I should be fine. 1/60th of a second, I should be fine, but I say 1/125th of a second to give me a little bit of a leeway, okay? Don't want to push these things to the limit, and it's only a one-stop difference. Right then, so that's the rule of thumb that I use that has worked for me. Like I say, if it's faster, fine. Put your camera on a tripod. Different things matter. What matters with your cameras on a tripod? You could have a really long shutter speed. If it's an interior shot and there's nothing moving, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. You can use any shutter speed you want. If you're outside and nothing's moving, doesn't really matter. If you're outside and it's a bit windy and the trees are blowing, in case you didn't know what a tree blowing looked like, then you might take a view on, do I want blurry trees in my photo? And you probably don't. So in that case, you would take a shutter speed that throws what you were taking the photo of, which is the building and everything around it. And the other one's clouds. Now, if the clouds are moving fast and you use a nice slow shutter speed with your camera on a tripod, your building's sharp and your clouds are blurry and it looks quite nice, but your agent might not want that. Your client might not want that. So just stuff to think about. One more thing to think about is image stabilization. I have a Canon 70 to 200mm lens, which gives me 4 stops of image stabilization. It's ridiculous, really, 4 stops. And what that means is, without image stabilization, if I'm using a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second, I can, with the 4 stops of image stabilization, use a shutter speed of, well, let's work it out. 1 stop from 1/125th of a second is 1/60th of a second. 2 stops is 1/30th. 3 stops is 1/15th. 4 stops is 1/8th of a second. I can take the same sharp photo 1/8th of a second. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Let's just double check that. So we start with an 8, so 1/15th is 1 stop, 1/30th is 2 stops, 1/60th is 3 stops, 1/125th is 4 stops. Now, I've never tried this, to be honest with you, or even though I've got the gear that I can do it with, but need to bear that in mind. And if you're taking photos with your camera on a tripod, you need to turn the image stabilization off. Well, you probably do, but check the manual. Okay, so not too complicated an answer. 1/125th of a second is, in general terms, the best shutter speed for real estate photography. Yes, you can argue long and hard that it isn't, but for a beginner and keeping things simple, it's fine. But your priority is probably the depth of field and the aperture. So just need to work it out. But it gives you a starting point. Right, I'm done here. Thank you very much for watching. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. But for now, please check out Photography Explained podcast, my excellent podcast. I should have said the Photography Explained podcast, shouldn't I, really? Because I was going to give you the website address then, and I went back to the podcast episode. But not to worry. photographyexplainedpodcast.com is where you can find the website. And also, why not check out my blog? There's lots of good stuff there. And my website, rickmcavoyphotography.com / that's it. Not / that's it. It's rickmcavoyphotography.com. Right, I'm getting myself into trouble here, aren't I? So I need to wrap things up by saying thank you very much for watching, and I will see you hopefully on my next video. Cheers from me, Rick.